Today we are going to be talking about Stranger Things Season 2, as well as The Walking Dead, The Flash, and Mr. Robot. So stay tuned. Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by Parametric and Lazy Ape Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and perspectives in the world of film and television. I'm here with Matt Hay, and this is our Tube Talk.
Things are going to get strange.
They are going to get strange. We're talking about Stranger Things Season 2.
Yep.
Matt, real high level. Did you love it as much as I loved it?
I loved it, yeah.
You loved it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Maybe. I was smiling a lot.
You were smiling a lot? When I first started it up, I was just so giddy. It was like I was at home, and I hit 12, and the little email notification popped up, and I was like, I was like, go. Can't believe how awesome. I stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning watching the first 2 episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Which was pretty horrendous for me. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking about, as I mentioned, The Walking Dead, The Flash, and Mr. Robot. We're going to spend most of our time, though, I think, talking about the Stranger Things. What do you want to do? Spoilers, non-spoilers?
Let's start off with some non-spoilers.
Okay. Then we'll briefly move into some spoiler talk, and then we'll get to the other stuff. So
we'll give a little warning.
Yeah,
we typically spoil things on TV Talk, but I think this is just such a special thing that we don't want to just ruin it right away.
Right. And there's a lot of people. I mean, this is a big show for a lot of people, and it does have a lot of stuff that could potentially ruin it if you spoil it. So we'll do our best to tiptoe around that to start. Yeah,
for sure.
So a couple ways to get connected. Do you want to tell our listeners first?
So get connected with us on our Instagram, Twitter at Real Review Media, Facebook.com/Real Review Media, and then YouTube.com/The Real Review, Gmail.com, which is just going to be realreviewmedia@gmail.com, and then our website, realreviewmedia.com. That's how you can get connected to all of those fun things, because they're all right there, centrally located, and some news items and some fun stuff.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah, that's how you can do that.
That's some good stuff right there.
Totally.
Well, then, let us get into our Stranger Things talk.
Yes.
Okay, so thoughts?
I really liked it.
I really liked it as well.
I mean, emotionally, it didn't hit the heights that season 1 hit for me, but I thought it was really good.
Yeah, let me do this. Let me give the synopsis here real quick. 1984, the citizens of Hawkins, Indiana are still reeling from the horrors of the Demogorgon and the secrets of the Hawkins lab. Will Byers has been rescued from the Upside Down, but a bigger, sinister entity still threatens those who survived.
Yeah.
Showrunners are, once again, the Duffer Brothers.
Yep.
Working towards it. So I had, going into this, obviously some misgivings because it's a second season. Mm-hmm. And as we know, that type of a thing can be very difficult for a show when they're not expecting things to maybe be as popular as they, and so it puts a lot more pressure, puts a lot more stress, potentially adds a lot more elements that they're going to be demanding. The studios are going to be wanting. Netflix is pretty good with that kind of stuff, but also makes the production schedules potentially more strenuous.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because they're like, go, we got to get this going. Yeah. People want to see it. So overall, I was a bit hesitant, and I will say, the season started off a little softer for me. Mm-hmm. I think it was still good, for sure. I really enjoyed the whole season. Yeah. But the first couple episodes of season 1 were like immediately like engaging and interesting and awesome. Yeah. And the complex narrative and the mystery that they kind of presented. Whereas this one was kind of more of a slow burn. Right. In a ways, you're kind of catching up with the characters and seeing where they're at. And you're seeing a little bit of the dynamics of where they're at now and how that kind of works. Will struggling and dealing with the results of having gone to the Upside Down and being tortured, I guess, in a sense, by the Demogorgon. Right. You're seeing the results of 11 no longer being in the picture and kind of how that, impacts everybody's lives, Mike in particular, and his relationship with 11, which I thought that was one of my best things about. I really liked. Yeah. And there's a really cool summary thing that I told you about that they kind of
like an after show.
It's like an after show, and they talk about how it's like power versus power, and it really was, you know, 11 versus Hopper, and so I thought that was really good. You kind of get into it, and then at about the point where they start getting into like the underground tunnels and things. Oh, I don't want to spoil that.
Well,
Sorry.
we're not really spoiling anything yet. So
I guess I spoiled a little bit there, maybe potentially, but yeah.
Well, you see tunnels in the preview, so it's not like that big of a thing. But
about that time,
about that
really picked up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I would agree.
Not that it was bad. It was just more of like a B-ish kind of range, and then it was like, whoa.
Right. So I really enjoyed it. Dustin still steals a lot of the show whenever he shows up. And I was telling you this earlier. I really, really liked Steve in this season.
Yeah, they had a different mindset with him this year.
Right. Well, and I think the thing is, last season, obviously we didn't like him up until like the the penultimate episode, potentially, or the last episode where he basically helps take on the Demogorgon. And he was great in this. I was like rooting for him. His time where he was hanging out, it was with a specific character. I don't want to ruin that, but it was very. It was endearing. It was great. It was just awesome to see Steve do some different things.
Right.
I really enjoyed him. All the kid acting was great. I will say this, for someone who didn't get much screen time in the first season, which is the focal point is around Will Byers in that first one.
Right. In
this one, he actually gets a lot of screen time.
What? You mean Dustin? I would say Mike had the most screen time.
No. I'm saying Will comparatively.
Oh, he had a lot. Right. Okay, gotcha.
To the first season, Will was hardly in it because he was the missing child.
Right.
This one, he's got some range and did some really incredible things, especially towards the end. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like,
you
this
really
kid
do
can
feel
act.
for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is good. And the humor was there. I didn't like, and we'll talk about it in the spoilers, I didn't like some of the stuff with Hopper, even though I love Hopper as a character, and his interaction with 11 in particular. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. And again, like I said earlier, it didn't hit some of those emotional heights. I saw season 1 before I watched season 2 again.
Yeah.
And at the end, the very last episode of season 1, and it hit me just as much emotionally the second time they did the first time.
Yeah.
I was like, when it's like flashing back to Hopper's daughter, I was like tearing up. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. And, being the emotionally unstable one, I was like, this is it. This is good stuff.
I think the reason I liked Hopper as much as I did is he really came across to me as almost like a dad from like my childhood. You know what I mean? He reminded me of like a lot of similarities to like my father.
Sure.
And how he acted. And so I was like, that's cool, because you rarely see a guy portrayed like that in film, in cinema these days. And so I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
He is a bit of a jerk, I mean, he can be a bit jerk. And I think I would say this about everyone for the most part this season: the story arcs weren't quite as deep. I think that there was a much shallower story arc. Some of the characters absolutely had much stronger story arcs.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it just didn't feel like it quite went as far. A lot of that potentially has to do with the fact, though, with the first season, that you're learning so much about everybody. You're learning so much about the world, their family, what they want, what they don't want. So there was some of that there. Overall, I liked everything that you're saying. I did feel like I didn't connect personally as strongly with 11 this season, and I think there's
an episode 7 that's extremely divisive for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was kind of a boring-ish.
I didn't like it. Was my least favorite episode of the
Absolutely.
season. So
and I'm not attacking her. I think she's great in the role, but it really didn't show a lot of latitude in her character, in her personality, and her acting chops. She's kind of got this, like, and we're getting into more negative territory here, but she's kind of got this either like slightly just whatever kind of personality, or like really angry or really sad.
Yeah. So like I can see how that episode, how they can tie that into her story and how it kind of comes full circle at the end. But I didn't, that episode I had a hard time like getting into a little bit, but
it was just a bit too much. I think if they had spent a little less time on that story, then it would have been fine for me. But it was like, we're spending an entire episode dealing with this, and it's going to take you that long, because it almost felt like she took a step back in a certain way, which is never necessarily a good thing.
Yep.
So that was a bit tough for me. I'm trying to think of some other stuff. I really like the new additions to the characters that they added. I thought all of them did a really good job.
Right. Dacre Montgomery as Billy.
Oh, yeah.
That character, I don't want to talk about too much, but the way he portrayed that character was super spot on. Did a really, really good job.
Like a border beginning stages of a psychopath.
Yeah.
And it was like really freaky at times, because you never quite knew what he was going to do.
Yeah. Max was good too.
Max was good. Yeah, I think she fit well within the group. She played a good role. That kind of fit in there. I felt like at times they were trying a bit too hard with her character to kind of make her important.
Right.
Because they're like, oh, well, we have to add her and make her relevant to the stuff that's going on. But I did like the dynamic of kind of what that added to some of some of the tensions, I should say, between the main child cast. Bob.
Oh, I love Bob. Yeah.
Bob was one of those guys that I showed up and I can't talk about that yet.
First of all, Sean Astin just crushed that role.
Yeah.
Did such a great job. In fact, I want to get ready to rate this thing. That way we can dive into the spoiler section.
Yeah.
Is that okay if I go there? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's do this then. If the first season of Stranger Things was super awesome, I loved, and I gave it like a 97, 98, this would be more like a 92, 93, which is still amazing.
Right.
So that's what I would rate this thing as. Really, really liked it. Like I said, the only thing keeping me from being like the same or if not perfect was just it didn't hit the emotional heights and it did take a little bit to kind of get going.
Agreed.
But
I'm like right there with you.
Yeah. Okay.
93 was how I was going to rate it for the same reasons. I think that episode 7 was a bit rough to get through. And then additionally, it took a little while to just kind of ramp into stuff. But still, all the way through, good humor, enjoyable, good acting, a lot of fun and special effects and whoa type stuff. So
yeah,
same idea.
Sure,
so with that being said, though, let's get into our spoilers.
Spoilers.
We want to talk about some fun stuff. So if you don't want to have anything spoiled about Stranger Things season 2, go ahead and turn this off now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and
Bob dies.
I knew you were going to go there for some reason.
That's kind of our spoiler every time.
Such a sad. That's what I want to say about Bob. He's the kind of guy that I think in any other show probably would have ended up being like a bad guy. And I thought they were going to go that route, but I thought it was so interesting by the Duffer Brothers to not end up having him be a bad guy.
Right.
Like I thought he was going to be like a Demogorgon fan or something.
Yeah.
You know, like because he was too nice and he was too kind of quirky and
but he was
weird.
Like cheesy, like in a realistic kind of like
exactly.
nerdy way.
Oh, I brought some board games for your kids to play. Like
some brain teasers.
Yeah, I mean, he was one step away from being Flenderson.
They don't call me Bob the Brain for nothing.
Exactly. But like in a lovable way. And so when and I saw it coming like when he was in there. And that scene, by the way, was so Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of Jurassic Park-esque moments in there and throughout the show. But like that moment in particular where he's got like the headphone and he's like, the guy's like, all right, I'm going to guide you through here. And he's like, all right, you're going to have to, even the way he like flipped the switches.
Yeah.
So there was two big ones that I saw that were like elements of other movies was Jurassic Park and for sure Aliens.
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
were the two big ones. And
even with the little like sonar thing, whenever the dots were closing in, and I was like, "That's Aliens."
Yeah, I was waiting for somebody to say, "Game over, man! Game over!" I was just waiting for that.
Exactly.
It was such a great. I thought it fit though. It didn't feel forced. It added a lot to it. So. Any other thoughts with Bob?
No, so good. I just really enjoyed his character at first. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Sure, where are they taking this? And apparently he was supposed to die early on, but they just liked what he did with it. And then they just kept him around. I thought this was great. And I thought it was good too, because it gave more emotional, emotional punch and heft when he did die.
Yeah.
That way, Joyce would, that kind of like tipped her over the edge too. She's already kind of been on the edge of psychotic break from season 1.
Yep.
And now she's like pushed it again. She's got her son and she's like cranking up the heat. It's like, get out of my son.
Yeah. One thing we didn't talk about, which we should briefly talk about, is the new monster.
Yeah, the shadow monster or the mind flayer.
The mind flayer. Flayer.
Flamer, as Nancy said. What about this mind flamer?
I thought he was really effective. I think I wanted actually more of it. I think the one thing I didn't like is because, and they talked about this in some of the interviews I've seen, where season 1, they were really just trying to set up the Demogorgon as like this almost shark-like creature. It was just instinctually based.
Right.
It sees something, it smells something, it's hungry, it eats it.
Right.
And that's how it operated. The second season, they were saying they were really trying to set up more of a real antagonist.
Right.
Something that had the thought and was planning and orchestrated. And I think they did that very effectively, but I wanted to know a bit more about it. I wanted to get a sense more for its personality beyond just like, I don't like hot things.
Yeah.
So that I never got have it speak a little bit, be through Will.
I thought we were going to get we heard a little bit of it speak through Will, but I thought we were going to get like the face reveal at the very end.
I thought we were going to get a bit more of an exorcism type thing.
It kind of felt a little bit like exorcism, even though that's not what it was.
Yeah, they were going to have to fight him off. But instead, Jonathan, and we can talk about Jonathan too, he's like, just stop hurting him. I felt Jonathan was so wasted this season.
I didn't like Jonathan as much
You
this
end
season.
up liking, and we can revisit that as well, you end up liking and results really connecting more with Steve.
Yeah.
And I actually felt more bad for Steve.
Me too.
Then I felt happy that Nancy and Jonathan
I was
got
irritated
together.
with Nancy, actually.
Yeah, because it felt like she broke up with him for such weak reasons.
And she's just saying a bunch of really messed up stuff when she's drunk.
Yeah.
I was like,
we're just fake. It's not real. It's not even real.
We killed Barbara.
Yeah, she played a great drunk character though.
Yeah, she did.
But the whole situation with her and Jonathan it almost felt more like, well, I need to do this just because I want to, and I want to see what it would be like to be with Jonathan. But I really, at the end of the day, like Steve, and we talked about this at the beginning of the season, they were very much like, well, it was the opposite. It was like, oh, well, I'm kind of with Steve, but I really do like Jonathan. It's almost like maybe they're doing that on purpose to present Steve as a realistic like triangle.
But exactly. Even when they were doing that at the beginning of this
romantic
season,
triangle, not him as a triangle.
So at the beginning of this one, Steve was they even set it up. They had like some genuinely like nice relationship moments where she's helping him with his like college application stuff. And even when they're at the party, Steve's like really concerned with Nancy, trying to help her.
Well, and he's opening up in that moment where he's like, this isn't good enough. It's just garbage. I shouldn't even, it's like he's showing emotionally that he can open up. And I think the thing that she was getting from Jonathan was an emotional connection that was different. Like they were similar in how they connected on their emotions. Whereas with Steve, he was a bit unrelatable because he's not probably as smart as Nancy. Yeah. He's kind of lived in this bubble in a sense, the popularity bubble that she never lived in.
But now he's out of it.
But he's trying to get out of it. He's trying to get on her level and she just doesn't want none of that. You know what I mean? Yep. So it made you really feel for Steve. And he did such amazing stuff with like the Demodogs.
Oh, he was so cool. I liked it when...
going down in the tunnels.
When he was just kind of fearless. Like he would go out there, even though it was kind of funny, like when he gets beat up by Billy at the end and he's in the car and wakes up, freaks out, doesn't want to, then he just kind of like, all right, I'm just going to do this thing. Let's just go. He takes initiative. He's like awesome. Dustin even says so as much. Like when he walks out of the bus and they're like, what is he doing? He's crazy. And Dustin's like, no, he's awesome.
Yeah, agreed.
I was like, that's so cool.
Agreed.
I know. He was great at this one. And I was talking about it earlier, his relationship and the way that his interacting with Dustin was some of my favorite stuff. Just the way that they were talking back and forth, like especially like about girls and like how you're not supposed to care. And even at the end, like he kind of
that was really cute.
He kind of like takes on the older brother role for Dustin.
Yeah, and Dustin kind of needs that because he's needs some smoothing out of his more goofy rub. Exactly. And it was such a beautiful thing at the end of the season where Nancy comes and like dance with them. At the dance.
I love that. My heart was happy.
I was like, this feels like my experiences at dances. Of course, I didn't have like a Nancy to follow up with. But, like I would have been that guy that walked us. So, do you want to dance? No, not at all. So I thought that was really cute. It felt almost like it was like a bit too romantically important at the end of the season to me. It was almost a bit too much about the romantic relationships.
A little bit. How like everybody paired off a little bit. But at the same time, it was done in a nice way. And the Nancy Dustin thing wasn't it didn't come across as like weird or like overly like romantic. Yeah. I even the line where
that's what it was all about, right? Because 11 and Mike.
That happened very last.
Max, like the whole
Max
all of them.
Lucas.
Yeah. All of them are like, well, now we're hooking up, and
I don't even know who the girl was that Will was dancing with.
Just some zombie boy you want to dance. I thought exactly. That's my point. Like all of them have to have a partner. Even if it's just him and Nancy, and there's no chance. Dustin and Nancy, and there's no chance. I don't know. That just felt a little bit like, you can have some of them just still being friends and being concerned about being friends, and some of them involved in romantic relationships.
Oh, Dart.
Yeah. Yes, D'Artagnan.
I enjoy Dart. Okay, so I didn't like the idea of Dart at first.
Okay.
And like he found a creature. I'm like, okay, what is this? And then very quickly we kind of connect the dots. This is a thing that Will threw up at the end of season 1.
I could see Demogorgon tendencies in it, which they probably did on purpose, like with the teeth.
Yeah. So I saw that too. I was like, this has got to be a baby.
And I knew
Demogorgon.
It was that slug. I'm like, there's no other way this thing would exist outside of that. But that was a cool twist when you find out that there was like a bunch of them.
Right. Yeah, that was a really cool twist. I was like, oh, dang, there's more than one.
Because when you think back of it, you realize, there was kind of multiple noises going on in like different places at different. So that actually makes a lot of sense,
Yeah, and I like how the sequel is not predicated upon what happened with Will and that slug. Yeah. It's more about the breach that 11 initially opened up in the beginning of season 1.
Right, which she has to close.
Right, exactly. So it's not like this thing that happened to Will is what's making the second season happen. It's still the effects of, what 11 did and how that breach is still there. And I like how the breach that you see in season 1 in that wall in the lab is basically just the tip of the iceberg. And then you can't go down and like, oh, this breach is giant. It's not small. Yeah.
You do feel like maybe these guys aren't quite that intelligent if they didn't realize that like that breach was potentially growing and moving out into like other portions of the crops and things like that. And that's what I'm talking about. I feel like in a season 1, that breach would have been figured out by maybe like the second episode.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, we played it out for a number of different episodes until we finally got to the point where we realized, okay, this is infecting all the different stuff. But overall, I mean, it was still, that's a minor gripe.
Minor things, nitpickies.
I thought they did a good job of bringing in a new monster, bringing in, like I said, the new characters. The parts with Max that I'm talking about where it felt a little bit forced was like him taking her aside and having that long conversation and trying to convince her over and over again about the realities. It's like a less significant character.
Right.
They would have just like told them, or they would have just been along for the ride and kind of discovered it as they go, instead of, making this big to do about the whole thing. So,
I wanted to see them all together sooner. I feel like too. They were kind of segmented and separated.
I missed that in a way.
Oh, the other thing.
I wish that they'd spent more time together as a group.
Sorry, and I know I want to get this out because I've been thinking about this. This is one of the big things that bothered me was I thought it was endearing when you first see that, Eleven and Hopper have kind of been living together.
Yeah.
And then simultaneously, while they're like starting to have these like arguments and fights, you see these flashbacks of them really having these like really nice moments together.
Yeah.
And I liked seeing the nice moments. I hated that they were fighting. I was like, come on, guys. You guys are two of my favorite characters in the show. Get along.
Yeah.
And it made sense story-wise, and they talk about it at the end. They make up at the end, I guess.
Yeah.
And Jim's like, I'm a black hole. He blames himself for his daughter essentially, and that whole thing. And it's understandable. And I get that arc. I just didn't want to see it kind of rub me all the wrong way. I was like, I get it. It makes sense as far as the story is concerned. I just don't want it to happen.
Yeah, I get you.
But that's all.
Yeah. I thought that, it made sense. They'd been living together for a year and they both are like stuck. She's been stuck in there and he's been promising.
Yeah.
I didn't like, we talked about this though, we didn't talk about this particularly, but the episode 7, when she goes into the city and she has kind of the misadventures in the city
8.
and she takes on her her punk version of herself. It just felt like I could deal with half an episode of this. Give me a half episode in Hawkins and give me a half episode of her in the city. I would have been fine with that, but I didn't want a whole episode devoted to all that and the whole subplot of her finding, her name and her mom. And it just felt like, okay, I
didn't like Mike being mad at Hopper either.
Yeah, that didn't make a lot of sense to me.
I was like, calm down, Mike.
He's trying to protect her. He could have just not done anything. He's trying to protect you, trying to protect her, but he's a kid, so I was thinking, well, maybe he's a little bit...
He's emotionally distraught at the moment. And I think he realized it too when they kind of hugged at the end. But
but overall, I did like it.
It's a great show. Great show.
Great show. And
I think they're gonna do 2 more and then they're done.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they said they're gonna end at 4. I think they said 4.
Okay. Well, they've definitely mentioned that they're gonna do like a follow-up episode almost to the season. I've heard that. They're going to do like a separate release of just like a one-off.
Really?
That's what I heard.
Oh.
I don't know if that's true or not,
Never
but
heard that.
I'm assuming obviously they're, Matthew Modine's character needs to at some point kind of Dr. Brenner is going to have to come back into the picture.
Which is interesting because it looked like he died at the end of the first one, but then they were talking about maybe he's alive. And at the same time, I was kind of like, well, maybe that one guy doesn't really know that he died from last year or whatever. I don't know.
But I would think that they would bring that up in the next season. Yeah. And I'm hoping that they give us a bit more of the character. I want the characters to spend more time together. It felt like a lot of them were pretty distant from each other in this one. But still great show. So awesome. Definitely check it out. So then why don't we move on to some of the other shows, get going on The Walking Dead.
Yeah, I didn't get to see this, so you're going to have to do this thing. I'll watch it, but... I'm
just going to go really brief.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be long. Doesn't need to be long.
This one was literally kind of a follow-up for the first episode.
Yeah.
They just built out the war. That's really what they did. It's all them just fighting, pretty much. There's like a few little weird... I didn't like them, but they were kind of like artistic close-ups of the characters like in different scenarios.
Kind of like what they did with Rick in the first one.
Yeah, but it was like, you get a bit more context for those this time than you did with the first episode. But it's kind of like they're just continuing to fight. Yeah. Nothing really moves forward in a sense. They're just all fighting. Some of the characters kind of have a little bit of emotion and moving. And they kind of, struggle with some of the ideas of like, can we kill these people? Should we kill these people?
Right.
How should we? But other than that, you could literally just read a summary of like this person, that person, that. It pretty much they're just all running around shooting people.
Gotcha.
That's kind of it. So
so action heavy.
Very action heavy.
Okay.
And it's all pretty much. I would say 95% of the action is them just standing around shooting.
Gotcha.
So wasn't super intense, wasn't super fun. You don't think that they're not going to have an episode like this in my mind where they're just going to randomly kill off some major character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the characters that's like a slightly major character got shot. Not really a major. He's like a secondary for sure. You know, he got shot. But you're like, you know, one of the characters is in peril, and you're like, okay, they're not gonna die. Yeah. So I give this episode a pretty low one for me for Walking Dead. I give it a B-. Okay. It's like an 81 kind of a thing. So.
Gotcha.
Yep. That's it. Then let's move on to The Flash.
Let's do it.
Which you did see.
I did see The Flash.
Yeah.
I like The Flash.
Season 4, episode 4.
Season 4, episode 4. And after we recorded the last week's episode of The Flash recap, I texted you and I said, the entirety of season 4 to this point, the first 3 episodes, is better than the entirety of season 3. Yeah. I just love that they basically retconned a bunch of the junk from the 3rd season. They got rid of excess characters. They brought back...
they did it so beautifully,
They brought back Harrison. And then they and they got back to that season 1 like feels like, you know, is how it felt. This episode wasn't great in any respect or way, shape, or form. It was a good episode. What made up for it not being like a really, really good episode is the fact that it still felt like season 1. It's the villain of the week, but still tying into the overall story arc of the Thinker, what's happening with that stuff. And then it tied back to season 3, which I did kind of like, where they're talking about DeVoe. Which is the Thinker, as what I'm assuming. So I did enjoy that. I thought that was kind of cool. But as for an episode, it was good. It felt legit.
I agree. Yeah. There wasn't any needless drama.
Yeah.
I would say Hartley, I'm not a super big fan of at this point. Sorry, Ralph Dibny.
Right, Dibny, yeah.
He's kind of, I mean, he's all right.
There were some funny visuals with him that were kind of funny.
The visuals are funny, but his dialogue wasn't very funny, and I don't know what he's adding to the cast right now that we don't already get, because Cisco's kind of like the goofy, silly guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we already get that with him, and then the snappy, witty remarks come from everybody.
Yeah.
Which, you know, so in HR... I guess he's not really goofy HR anymore. He's kind of like the last season's HR to me at this point, except he has powers. And his powers are so like weird to me. So, I don't know.
Danny Trejo is kind of funny.
I like Danny Trejo. I thought he was an amazing little addition.
It's like I hate you, but I respect you.
Did you see the part because they're going to go do where he's trying to not stalk him.
Like hunt him.
Yeah. Do you see the part where Cisco grabs the machete?
Yeah.
I thought that was something.
Not. He's like, no.
Yeah, Danny Trejo's known as Machete. So I thought that was really cute and fun. I was surprised they didn't bring up the whole pregnancy thing sooner.
Right. Well, it seemed like they're not going to make a big drama out of it.
Right. I was like, you presented it as such a big deal.
I was like, oh, okay. I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with the route they took on that, and everybody's just kind of congratulating at the end. I thought for sure they're going to be like, Iris was going to get all moody, be like, you're going to have another child. How am I supposed to relate or even have a relationship with my younger brother who's 25 years younger than me?
Now we have to adopt another kid that we cannot be in love with.
Exactly.
I didn't think that they were going to do it that way, but I was fine with it. I thought they were going to make that a big part of this episode.
No, it's good.
I already called this. I did mention this. I do think, Caitlin and Ralph will probably have a romantic thing.
I don't see that
you
happening.
Don't see
I don't even see him really being in the picture that much.
They shook hands, though. I mean, he's like part of the team.
I feel like he's just going to have his private detective agency, and then he'll jump in every now and then. That's kind of what my thought is.
Hopefully, because I don't really need a lot of him.
Me neither.
So it was nice to see Cisco actually like progressing in his romantic relationship as well. It was nice. He's kind of getting a little bit there. And then at the very end, you got a little hint that
Cynthia.
Yeah,
Cynthia. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. You get a little hint that Caitlin's kind of involved in some deeper waters that she kind of hasn't like let
what did it say on the door again?
We miss you, I think.
Something like that. But yeah, we got hints of that in the first episode too. Yeah. But yeah, it was good. If I had to rate it, I'd give it like a 8.
8.
Yeah.
I probably did a little higher. I did like 8.3.
Okay.
But yeah.
Cool. I rounded the nearest 0.5.
I gotcha. Cool. So then the last show we're going to be talking about here, and again, hitting this somewhat quickly, Mr. Robot.
Mr. Robot.
Season 3, episode 3. So overall, I'm still enjoying the show. I'm a bit perplexed as to what So this was a kind of a sidestep episode.
Like off of the main storyline kind of a thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's related, but they kind of... I keep saying kind of. They delve into the story of one of the characters and how what's been happening over the course of the last season or so.
Yeah.
And it's almost entirely their perspective.
Okay.
If not entirely their perspective.
Gotcha.
So that's how the whole episode goes. And they're kind of a side character at best.
Is it that Welling guy?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So it was a bit like I wasn't that interested. Yeah. I could have been told that information or seen it in brief snippets of flashback instead of getting an entire episode devoted to just... And maybe there's some people out there that really wanted to know what he was doing, but it just didn't feel that interesting to me. And they did a weird thing about, I don't know, a quarter of the way into the episode, maybe less. They've known to... The show will constantly show and portray real things that are happening, real people. You know, President Obama's been on the show, not on the show, but like they've used footage
clips
of him,
and stuff like that,
clips and things like that. And they've used like Steve Jobs and other things like that, like real portrayals of real people that exist in our world.
Yeah,
which has always been very weird to me because it's definitely not our world.
Yeah,
like it is, but it can't be because of what's happening in the show. It can't exist, and so it always kind of is functioned to take me out of the show. And this most recent episode, they did that very, very, very heavily with President Trump.
Okay, gotcha.
And it was very discordant for me, and it was very odd. It took me out for like a minute almost.
Right, okay.
And it felt like they were just taking a moment to like make an issue and attack. And I actually read recently that the writer of it, Sam Esmail, he literally just wrote that in there just to poke fun at President Trump.
I gotcha. Which,
again, I'm not watching the show for political stuff. I one way or the other, whether I do or I don't, or hate or love president, whoever they are, Obama, Trump, Clinton, Bush, whoever.
Right.
I just don't feel like that's the platform I want my television shows taking.
Sure.
That whoever you are, whatever. I'm like, I thought Mr. Robot was above that, which is kind of sad to me. And people are going to watch that, and some of them are going to love it because they think, I hate President Trump, so bash him. That's great. Then other people are going to watch and go like, I like President Trump. How dare you do that? I'm like, why would you show that's so interesting and dynamic and has so many winding and twists and turns and tends to be like deeper thematic things just go into this moment. I don't know. I'm speaking a lot about it. It just really was not, it was stupid. It just felt like a stupid decision made by the writer. Some people are going to disagree with me on that.
It's all good.
And I'm not saying I support
he just took
anybody.
artistic license and decided to do his thing, I guess. So
so that was just odd to me, and it kind of set a weird tone for the episode that then filled in. So this wasn't a great episode for me. I think is how it boiled down. I mean, slightly interesting things happened, but it felt almost like I forget what you call it, like a box episode.
Maybe it'll feel better in the context of the greater season, kind of when it's done. So
it was kind of all taking place within just one or two general areas. It felt like more of a box episode. So it was the same thing with The Good Place this season, or this episode. It was more of a box episode. Okay. So I would rate it slightly lower than I would normally give like a robot episode. Probably at more like an 84. Okay. 83, 84.
So 8.3, 8.4, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's balancing between B and B minus.
Okay, gotcha.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. So that is it then.
Yeah, that's it.
We're going to go ahead and wrap things up here on Tube Talk, and some good ways again at the end to get connected. RealReviewMedia.com. Check us out there. We've got Facebook, which is Facebook.com/RealReviewMedia. We also got our Twitter, Instagram, which are both at Real Review Media. And then we would love to hear your thoughts, perspectives on Stranger Things or any of these shows. We're going to be catching up on some other shows and talking about those probably next week. RealReviewMedia@gmail.com. Love to hear from you.
Totally.
There you go. Anything else, Matt?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, it's been real.
It's been real.